Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another Brony Debates Live. It is Friday night. I have not slept. My head is pounding, and it's time to freaking party. And by party, I mean we're going to break out the party canon. And by break out the party canon, I mean we're going to talk about writing for canon and should fans do it. Today's topic was suggested by Aleximus Prime, who's joining us tonight. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Brawny.
Yep, you're very welcome. We've also got Pony Cordero as usual. How's it going, sir?
Hey, what's up, buddy? Fuck Eiley Monty.
What did Monty do?
A lot of things. Continue the intro.
Alrighty, you're just gonna leave me hanging like that? How dare you?
Yeah, it's called a teaser. Finish the
Alright,
intro.
alright. And we got Angel of Speed, who's got some good counterpoints for us tonight. How are you doing, Angel?
I'm doing quite well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for wanting to come on. I know it was short notice, and but like you messaged me and said you had some pretty good, like I said, some counterpoints for what we're going to be talking about here tonight. So, real quick, let me go off and read our patrons. I'm very grateful to all of my generous supporters on Patreon. Hey guys, here's what's up. We are going back into fundraising mode, okay? Because I've decided I don't like having 3 jobs anymore. So we're going to try to get content creation to full time. The goal
You should have 0 jobs like me. It's great.
Yeah, the goal there is we got to somehow get the Patreon up to like around 3,000 a month. I don't know how we're going to do that, but we're going to try, okay? And we're going to do it $1 at a time. If all 11.6 thousand of my subscribers just gave me $1 a month, I have no idea how my tiers would scale up to having 11,000 people in the Discord server, but that would just I would cease to have problems. Cordero would cease to have problems. We would just give all of our problems to Angel, really. But that's
There we go.
yeah, that's how the universe demands balance. That is the rule of equivalent exchange. Anyway,
$11,001 is good, but what if you just had one really big whale? You gotta find your whale, Brawny.
oh geez, yeah, it's also going to be a lot harder to evade taxes like that. But anyway, very grateful to Patreon, especially the $10 and up tiers such as Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak Ministry, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, DJ Skywalker, Rein-Kun, Morningstar, Cordero, who's with us tonight, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Kanto Acrylic VA, Zoro RX720, Mr. Sonic 31, Ridge the Hedgehog, in Dark Malcontent, author of the Metaverse series. Check out all their links in the description. So, with that out of the way, Alex, what made you want to talk about this topic tonight?
Well, about a week ago, I saw a video by Jeremy Hambley, TheQuartering. And he didn't start this news. A lot of people are talking about it, but basically, one of the Marvel writers, I think it was someone from She-Hulk, I can't remember, but somebody who's a writer for Marvel or somebody who works in production for the Marvel media in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, basically said they try to stay away from people who are fans of Marvel. In fact, that's actually a red flag for them. And they try to instead use, I can't remember, basically what they said was code
people
for
outside of the culture. I should link that video because I watched it a couple of times in preparation for this. So give me some opening thoughts on that.
Well, if you want my answer on whether or not I think you should hire a fan, I tend to usually say, with answers to questions like that, I tend to usually say, well, yeah, but also no, or it depends. I think it's good enough to say that yes, absolutely, you must hire a fan to write the thing, because if you don't, it usually will end up bad. One such example, and these are movies that I've actually loved and defended before, but I am also able to criticize, and I know why people don't like them. The Michael Bay Transformers films are loved by many and also hated by many. They're kind of infamous. And I'm just going to say it right now. I have respect Bay for what he's done, but he's not a Transformers fan. If somebody like him is going to say, I hate the Dinobots, then, well, that doesn't necessarily make you not a fan. It just simply means you're, degrading a very important part of Transformers history, especially since he later on put the Dinobots in. But, yeah, I think Michael Bay is a good example of someone who isn't a fan. He is there mostly because Hasbro knows he's good with explosions and stuff, and he'll make it really good in terms of action.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Lauren Faust, I think we all know, was a fan of My Little Pony. She played with the toys when she was a little girl. She watched the shows. Hasbro knew what they were doing hiring her. Obviously, it was a 9-season show. And even though she was only on for 1 season, the people who took over, I think, were also really, like, they may not have been as big of a fan of the source material as she was,
Mm-hmm.
but they definitely, for the most part, knew what they were doing. I know we had some duds with some episodes in the show, and that was actually what me and my friends on my podcast discussed last time, are our top favorite and top least favorite episodes of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic.
Okay. And so those are some pretty good opening points. Angel, you had some counterpoints you told me. What do you think about this issue?
Before I answer that question, I have a question of my own.
Okay.
Who wants to bet that the conclusion for tonight's debate is going to be talent?
You know, that is a fair call.
Yeah, this is a hard it depends answer. Well, there we go. Good debate, everyone. It depends.
Well, there's a lot more to it than that. But Angel, go ahead and, now that you've spoiled the whole debate for us, now hopefully we can maintain our audience. But now that you've done that, tell us what you think.
Well, I think that it's a decent idea to have a writer who's neutral towards like a property and try and have their own take on it if possible, and so that they're not blinded by nostalgia and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. True.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, one thing you said to me, Angel, I think it was yesterday, was you brought up the old phrase of nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. And that could apply even before the Disney trilogy, right? Like when the prequel trilogy was coming out, nobody hated Star Wars more than Star Wars fans.
And there's like a term for that called the fandom menace, named after episode 1.
Yeah. So I can definitely see your point there. Cordero, I can probably guess that you're leaning more towards the side that fans should be writing for what they think. Is that a correct assumption? Fans should be writing for the shows that they like.
I was gonna say that if you're not a fan if you're not the original creator and you're not a fan of the story you're writing for, you don't have any business writing for it. And I would extend that to, even if you're a professional writer, let's say you've been hired to write the Transformers movies and you didn't grow up or watch Transformers, but you enter the property and go, okay, let me look at the source material and see what I'm working with. If your reaction is, oh, this is nice, I see why people like this, let me make something let me make something good out of this, then that's fine. I'm fine with that. Obviously, professionals are not going to be childhood fans of everything that they create, as nice as it is when that happens. But there's so many cases where a studio has the rights to something. They're like, oh, let's get the guy who made this movie or the lady who did this thing, and we'll have them write it. And that person comes in and they're like, oh, well, let me look at the source material. Wow, this is stupid. I hate it. And then they're the ones who make it anyway. I just find that unacceptable. It's bound to happen from time to time. But yeah, I wish that would never happen. Everyone should be a fan of the material they're writing, even if you're only a fan of it in a professional aspect.
So when we talk about cases like Lauren Faust, who was a fan of the original show, and then wrote for, and then some would say created G4, and yeah, she definitely created G4, even if she didn't write most of it, but she made the Bible and the premise and all of the. So, would we be in disagreement that G1 and G2, what she would have been watching and admiring, was not nearly as good as G4? So sometimes, as if you're not a fan of it, like there's been plenty of things that I liked in concept. Like Bleach and Code Lyoko are two really good examples. And I watched the heck out of those shows because I loved the premise, but I was waiting for it to get good the whole time, and it never happened. So,
I know what you mean.
And you might even like the Power Rangers could be another example. I think they're really cool in concept, but something about the delivery always falls flat for me. So I would be trying to improve on the concept without changing what it is. I think that's kind of what Lauren Foss did. Does anybody want to add or take away from what I'm saying here?
I mean, you're basically saying if they were a childhood fan of the show, that's the dream scenario, and I agree.
Yeah.
Am I saying that though, or because like I wouldn't call myself a Bleach fan, but I bet you I could write Bleach better than what was currently.
Oh yeah, that was the other half of what you're saying, is that like a lot of things can have a really good premise, but just not executed very well, like Bleach and stuff. And yeah, that happens all the time too.
And are you talking about Bleach the anime or Bleach the manga?
Yes.
It doesn't really matter. I mean, aside from all of the filler arcs, and Bleach had a ton of filler arcs that brought down the anime, but for the most part, it stayed pretty close to the manga. Like if there were any changes, most of them were minor and aesthetic. So I'm not sure what you're getting at there, Alex.
Well, because sometimes they're different. Well, it seems like manga and anime tend to share enough lore. I know there's differences, and I don't really read enough manga or watch enough anime to know for sure. But the first few issues of My Hero Academia seem to be pretty similar to what I had seen of the show. Yeah, I'll take your word for it that they're close enough.
So when you get another problem against all this that you can have is sometimes you can get a writer who's a fan of the original source material, and then they use it as a vector for their bad fan fiction. Yes. We might be able to say that for the He-Man reboot or sequel or whatever it was that just happened. I forgot the name of it. But another example that comes to my mind was one of the Powerpuff Girls reboots. And Alex knows exactly where I'm going. Now the guy who directed that had a self-insert character that was romantically involved with Blossom. So that's certainly a bad type of we have fans writing for us, and they just use it to, which by the way, how does that go through so many levels of producers and censors and all these college educated individuals that don't look at it and go, hey, this is quite obviously a self-insert, you freaking creep.
Yeah, I actually thought you were starting to talk about the new live action show, which is being like not canceled but withheld. But they like the script was leaked and it was so awful. Like it's not even just a bad fan fiction.
Oh, that happened years ago.
Oh, that happened like a year ago.
Oh, really? I thought that happened.
I didn't even hear about this.
Are you talking about the CW show?
It's probably picked up years ago.
CW show. Yeah, that was last year sometime when the script leaked for the CW show, the live action one, the one where they take like all of them except I think one are like bisexual. There's like a sex scene with Buttercup and her girlfriend. Bubbles rants to Professor Utonium about how like he sold rights to have a cartoon made of them and it whitewashed them. Like, good God, how can you get any worse with insulting the source material than that? Wow. That show needs to be canceled outright. Don't even change it.
Well, it'll let it get released so it can flop as hard as Batwoman did, and maybe they will learn their lesson this time.
Batwoman was canceled, so it didn't have a chance to flop.
No, it got released. It didn't. I think it only got like 1.5 seasons, but I
thought you were talking about like the movie.
Oh no, I'm talking about the show, which was also a CW show.
Yeah. Yeah, ironic, huh?
So, but anyway, Powerpuff Girls. What do you guys think about that situation?
It sounds like it sucks.
So here's the thing.
I
There
haven't watched
is
too
if
much
we,
of
Riveting
that,
debate.
so
If
no
we-
comment.
Debate.
if we, okay, let me rephrase the question here. If we encourage us for hiring, if we encourage studios to hire fans of a material of a franchise to write for the continuation of that franchise, how likely is it going to be that that sort of thing becomes normal, or frequent?
It's-
It would be the better word for it, because it'll never be normal, and if you write like that, you're stupid.
It is frequent.
I'd like to
Like,
think
they're-
that
they're-
it wouldn't be frequent, but considering how incompetent major studios are being, I think
What is-
it's hard to say.
What is frequent? Because it happens a lot where somebody who was just a fan of something ends up being on the professional team. Talent often rises to the top. So if a studio is like, oh, we need this, we need this company to make this thing, and then the artists at that company are like, all right, how do we do this? Look at this fan made stuff. This guy does something right in the vein of what we're doing. Let me call that guy. That happens a lot. That absolutely happens a lot. It's happened in Sonic. It's happened in I don't have a ton of examples, but like off the top of my head, but like artists who were just fans doing a really, really well-made fan thing very, very often get brought into the actual thing if the creators or runners are willing and open to do that, or are allowed to do that by the people with the money.
So then the question becomes, based on your experience, what would you say the percentages between
Oh gosh.
fans writing in it going well and fans writing in it and it being horrible?
I can't think of any example of a time where a fan was plucked out of the fandom to be on the professional thing, the actual thing, and that the thing failed. That was a terrible idea. The fan made a horrible thing. Because usually, if a fan is being hand selected by the people with the intellectual property to work on it or to make it, there's usually a very, very good reason, and it's going to be a passion project 100% of the time, because it already was when they were a fan, and now they're just getting paid to do it. So I can't even think of a time. I'm sure everything happens once. I'm sure it's happened.
Well, the
I don't know of
the example I gave, and to be fair, it is the only example that I can really think of, is the Powerpuff Girls, like we were talking
Was
about.
that a quote fan?
I believe he was.
Well, was he the artist hired to begin with, or is he my example of fan was plucked by people who needed the art?
I think, that I don't know.
Because he might have happened to be a fan of the show, which is usually a good thing, and then it turned out he was just a weirdo that wanted to put his OC.
Yeah, because I tried to answer, and then I realized halfway through answering that I actually don't know the answer, so I don't want to stick my foot in my mouth any more than I already tend to do.
You know what I want to do with Professor Utonium? I want to make him a commentary on capitalism.
Why though?
Is that what they did?
Ask it. Based on what Brony said, we're like, oh, you sold the rights to make a TV show of us, and it was whitewashed, and it sucked for.
Well, that was Alex, but yeah.
Oh,
was
yeah.
me.
Gotta make it woke.
Yeah, and well, that's something that we've all agreed on in the past on this show before, is that everything sort of just tends to come with that I'll say it leftist narrative that puts the politics over the story, and we all freaking hate it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's been like 14 debates at this point.
Yeah.
But,
Well, there's something I want to say to clarify. I did say earlier, I think you really pretty much always should hire someone who's a fan. And I have no doubt some of these people who aren't doing a good job, in my opinion, with these things are fans, but you have to be careful what kind of fans you hire. Some people are like either overly passionate and will throw in too many member berries or whatever, or like in the case of what's his face, Kevin Feige, yeah, the guy who's in charge of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I have no doubt he is a fan of Marvel. I'm pretty certain he is.
Mhm.
I don't know for sure how much of one, like probably more than me. I don't know as much about Marvel, but he is also the one who's been responsible for encouraging all of like the quote unquote woke stuff. You know, he fanboys over Brie Larson. He's obviously okay with what She-Hulk did and all that. He unfortunately, even though he's got the guy who's been, you know, controlling this for a while, he is now ruining it. And maybe I don't know when he even stepped in, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe did start off really good, in my opinion. And then around Endgame, it just quickly evaporated into we're getting rid of the male cast now and bringing in females. And it's not like I have a problem with female superheroes. It's just it's become pretty obvious they're playing politics now and making like feminist rants.
Oh, yeah.
And,
So that's
you know,
that's the question there, Alex. Is he doing that because he doesn't respect the source material, or is he being given a directive from shareholders and executives? Do we know the answer to that question?
Probably the latter.
Probably a little bit of both, but I do think the latter, because we've got like ESG and everything forcing companies to do this woke thing and that woke thing. Otherwise, you don't get your assistance and everything. And it's just that really has to go. ESG is totally evil, and any other companies that are affiliated with these entertainment businesses telling them make this character gay. We don't care if it's a character that's been straight before.
So,
like
rewind just a little bit here, Alex. Can you define ESG for me? Because I actually don't know what that is.
I can't remember. It's some sort huge kind of like globalist organization that's
The environmental, social, and governance. That's the first thing that popped up on Google.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's basically forcing all these companies to do things. Like it's forcing these companies to. I don't have all the information really, but it's either encouraging or bribing them with money to, you know, make sure you hire more black people than like white people or whatever, or make sure the ratio to men and women is even. I don't need to get into a topic about why it's really not.
Then what they would do in that situation is, if that's the type of thing that the people with all the money and that are commissioning these shows want to make, then they would go hand pick the fans that are writing that kind of bad fan fiction and bring them on to so that ends up becoming a real chicken and egg sort of situation there. What do you guys think? Is that an accurate assessment, do you guys think?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it really does start with something like ESG. This whole thing has really kind of morphed its way out. There wasn't a whole lot of it at all to begin with, and then there was a little, but we weren't so concerned. We're just like, oh, it'll go away eventually, and now it's kind of out of control with a couple gems in there like Top Gun Maverick or Cobra Kai. I haven't seen either, but I hear are really good. Fans love them. They're a shout out to the original.
I've heard it's good.
You know, I've only seen the first 2 episodes of Cobra Kai because I don't feel like paying for YouTube Red.
We had a party over at my house a little while ago, and one of our friends who's been on the show before asked me what I thought about Cobra Kai, and he pulled up an episode, and I was like, this is the worst choreography I've ever seen.
Oh, no.
That's
like the easy thing to do. There's so many good stunt coordinators and fight coordinators.
I know, right? It's like all you had to do, and you're filming in LA. You go to literally
I know, right?
any karate school, and you will find people that can do better than what you've gotten.
I mean, I don't think you can drive from Glendale to like downtown LA without like running over a few stunt coordinators in LA.
Exactly. Can you believe I used to try to be one of those guys?
Well, what about the originals? Were they that bad?
No, but like it worked. It wasn't good from a choreography standpoint, but it worked for other reasons. And and real karate is kind of like that to a certain degree. So people like me that are just complete.
It was good enough.
Yeah, nerds about it can suspend our disbelief. But that's all.
Yeah.
We're getting off topic here. The Cobra Kai, however, could be an example because that was definitely written by fans.
It was.
So Has
Well,
anybody else here?
I went and did a mean thing and broadened
Mhm.
the definition of fan to anyone who respects the source material, because I'm a prick like that.
Okay, well, that's certainly. I don't disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree
So,
too.
based Cordero.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because I mean, like, not like I said, not all professional writers are gonna be fans of everything or know everything about everything. So it's like, hey, you're an acclaimed writer. We want you to make this property. Oh, okay. Well, let me see what that's about. Oh, okay.
yeah,
I can make something
because
with this. I
because
think that's the minimum standard from a creative perspective.
I don't think that Mitch Larson was watching My Little Pony as he was growing up, right? Like
Probably
he
not.
probably wasn't, but
He came to respect the source material
yeah,
when he was called to be a writer.
yeah, and
Totally okay.
and mostly he liked what he was doing. He believed in writing good characters and writing good stories, and him and Lauren Foss sort of meshed, and he enjoyed that creative freedom that a lot of writers wish they could have in the early seasons of, and every time someone makes a top 10 pony episodes list, at least half of it are just Larson
Episode
episodes.
100.
Yeah. Well, I've seen people put that one on their worst, and those people are just wrong. So we got that going on. But one thing I wanted to talk about tonight, because this type of thing is inevitable when you got franchises that run long enough, and we talk Star Wars to death there. I think that they should just give it to Dave Filoni. But
Yes.
one thing that I wanted to actually not necessarily talk about, but more sit back, listen, and learn about is Doctor Who. Now, Doctor Who's been going on for like 80 years. Does anybody? So they're bound to be mostly fans writing that show. Cordero, do you happen to keep up with? I know these other guys don't, but do you happen to keep up with Doctor Who? Know a lot about it and can.
I know a lot about the Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat era of Doctor Who. I didn't finish the last season of Capaldi of Doctor 12,
Mhm.
and I haven't seen any of the lady. I don't even remember the actor's name who came afterwards, and now she's been regenerated or is about to. So I'm way behind on Doctor Who, but mostly I would want to watch Capaldi's last season because I thought he was a great doctor. Who had bad writing, unfortunately.
Mm.
But they went completely go woke, go broke with when they regenerated Capaldi, and it went downhill. And I realize I haven't watched any of the show to know that for sure, but I think the evidence is not just the infinite video essays on YouTube about how bad um, Doctor Who became, but also because Doctor Who. Have you been to conventions lately? Doctor Who fell off a fucking cliff. It used to be everywhere. Like everybody was talking about. Nobody talks about the new Doctor Who episodes, or at least while the 13th Doctor was going on. And I think that was the most damning thing. It wasn't even like, oh, did you hear about this woke thing they did or this woke thing they did? It was just as if it didn't exist anymore. And I think that's your proof that it's not any good, even though I haven't seen any of the episodes.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and they don't even merchandise it anymore. I've
Yeah.
heard the merch is going way down in sales.
I've never seen a fan property become irrelevant that fast before. Like it was wild.
Yeah.
I heard our friend say Game of Thrones in the background there, and I was about to bring that up too. But
Peanut gallery
and
crisp.
what's even crazier to me is how telling the fan reception is to this kind of thing is that this stuff happens all the time. We've got almost a decade of precedence at this point, and all it does is just kill the fandom. And like the people that were calling for it that were calling for this type of writing and representation were never fans of it in the first place. And then you tried to appeal to them, and you ended up getting rid of the fans that you liked. And so,
I think that era is
the
coming to an end. I do think that era is coming to an end. The people with money are only going to burn their money for so long before they're like, this method doesn't work. Because the whole we need to have modern ideals has been a big thing the past decade, like you said, but that motto keeps not working. So these people who have these ideals that they want to force into a certain type of writing, they're going to stop being handed the money. They're going to stop being the people who are hired eventually. And I think it's already starting to happen. It's already starting to turn where it's like, hey, message is great, but you gotta have a story first. Tell any message you want, and this is what I believe too. Have any message you want, but you got to be good at telling a story first. If you're good at telling a story, in my opinion, you've earned my attention to your message, whatever it is. Even if I don't agree with it, if I like the story, I'll appreciate a good story.
Yeah, and if if the rest of the audience is anything like me, it's like if you're shoving a message that I disagree with down my throat, I'm probably just going to disagree with you harder.
Human nature.
Yeah.
Human nature.
I'm
you
just
immediately
gonna
run away from it like you're 5.
Yeah, exactly. You're just gonna make me dislike it more, and you're gonna give me more reasons to legitimately dislike it. So maybe I had a stupid prejudice before. Well, now it's legit. Thank you. And
now I am prejudiced.
Yeah. Well,
don't mind if I do.
I know, right? Thank you for making it easy. But if you tell a good story, now I'm forced as an intellectually honest person to go, okay, that's interesting, and sit there and consider and broaden my worldview and things like that. But I just don't.
Also, you might pull a different message out of it. Like somebody could be doing like an anti-capitalist, pro-communist, or pro-wealth redistribution story, and you might pull a completely different morals out of it and be like, oh, I didn't think of it that way at all. And I think that's what's scary for the woke culture people who want to put a certain morality into these things, is they're like, no, we have to spell it out. We have to make sure that this can't be misinterpreted as anything else, because God forbid somebody watches your story that has like a pro wealth redistribution message and they get out of it that, capitalism is good if we just get back to basics. Like, oh, how dare you? But I mean, that's the thing about art, is the author's intent can be one thing, but what the audience pulls out of the author's intent could be anything else or all of the above. Like, oh gosh, have we done a death of the author debate yet? I know we've brought it up.
Yeah, I believe that's been done.
Yeah.
And to quote Brawny, if it can mean anything, then it can mean nothing.
Well, if it can mean anything, then it means nothing.
Let me sum up that debate to just make the point real quick. The author's intent is not dead. It is very important, but the authorial intent isn't the only valid interpretation. Like, there can be multiple valid interpretations. And to Brawny's point of, if it can mean anything, it means nothing, that's what the word valid is for. If it's not a very good interpretation, then it's not valid.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my thing, is people talk about death of the author doesn't matter. No, the author definitely matters. But once it's out there, once a story is out there, the author is no longer the end-all be-all. The author is a way of looking at it. It's a strong way of looking at it, because it's the source, but it's not the only way. The text, the movie, the story has to be able to stand on its own, and things that the author didn't intend, people are going to get out of it. And that's the scary thing about art. And so these people doing woke stuff are like, we have to make sure they get only exactly what we want them to get out of it. They're basically clinging to authorial intent and telling you you're a bad person for disagreeing.
Mm-hmm. So why would Marvel not want to hire any fans, aside from, let's put all politics aside here, if that's possible? Is there any legitimate reason Marvel would prefer to not hire fans?
As in a non-industry person, like somebody who knows a lot about Marvel and the universe but hasn't worked in the industry? Because if somebody is, this is where it gets blurry, because if it's like, oh, they hired this fan of Marvel to write the next Marvel movie, and it's like, yeah, and it's also an industry guy who has writing credits.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
No, they're looking for people that don't know these characters and don't know these stories. And in the quartering video that Alex mentioned at the beginning of the stream,
they're purposefully looking for people without knowledge.
Yes, and in the video that he mentioned, they said that they don't want people who know these characters. So is there any legitimate reason why you would do something with such an old and beloved franchise? Like, do we have any legitimate reasons?
It sounds like they want it to be completely different. They're like, they're basically saying, we don't want anyone to already be a fan, because if you know these characters, you're already tainted, or you already have this idea of what they're like. It's basically them saying, we want the name of these properties, but we want we want it to be something completely different. We don't want it to be what it is. For whatever reasons, we think what it is bad or problematic or something. So we need somebody to start from scratch and just reinvent this whole thing, which is basically the same as making a new property, but you're just slapping the name.
Yeah, and then you don't have to
the
take
old
the
property on it.
financial risk of whether or not,
Exactly.
because the people that like Spider-Man are going to come and see it if
Yeah.
it's got Spider-Man's name on it,
If you see
regardless
his
of
picture on it.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah, so basically
you advertise a
they want to save
Spider-Man
money.
movie, and then the whole movie is about, and then Spider-Man is in there for 5 minutes, and it's all about Gwen Stacy and she can't find a date for prom, you know, or something.
It's all about Aunt May going back to college to get a degree.
Yeah, that's even better.
That's the whole movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because so basically they want the guaranteed money, but they're basically saying write a completely original story in characters, and we're just going to call it the thing that we have the license for.
So we sort of
rights
already
to.
know what Alex thinks about that question. Angel, do you have anything you want to add or take away from it?
Let me think. I'm not sure if I can add anything to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, let's ask one more question here before we get into audience participation. Let's say you were put in charge of a franchise that you know nothing about and you're not a fan of. Or you know what? No, we'll say, because that question wouldn't work if you knew nothing about the franchise. Let's say you were put in charge of something that right now you're not a fan of, that, or maybe you don't even like it. What would you?
I'm an outsider. Okay.
Yeah. What would you do? What changes would you make, if any? Cordero, what do you think?
If I'm outside talent, and thank you for thinking I have talent. If I'm outside talent being brought in on a property that I don't know much about, I mean, my answer is pretty obvious. I would dive into the source material. I would just have to become a fan overnight. And if I didn't like what I was into, or didn't see anything that I thought I could work with, I'd be like, hey, I would say I can't take the job. I'm not the guy to make this. But if I dove into the source material and saw something I liked, or was able to vibe with the creative vein, I would be like, okay, now I think I can make something out of this. And because I'm new and have an outsider's perspective, I would then bring people into my team who are insiders. I would be the guy looking for the highly talented fans. That's how I would do it.
Let me rephrase the question. You're in charge of.
Okay.
You're in charge of. So pick a franchise. I'm saying name one that you're
High
not a
Guardian
fan.
Spice.
Yeah. Okay. So High Guardian Spice. What do you change at High Guardian Spice without breaking any of the rules that you've set for yourself?
Oh, I could steal from Literature Devil, who actually went through the first episode of High Guardian Spice and fixed it and wrote it as like a more functional story. I'd probably do something like that. I'd be like, hey, I'm not going to change the whole vibe and the whole tone of the show, but we at least have to tell a functional story. So we got to make these characters work. And yeah, I'd probably do that.
Okay. What would you change? So I didn't see that video because I'm trying to ignore the existence of High Guardian Spice as much as possible. But give me just 1 point of something that you would change if you're just stealing from him. And that's another thing. Now you're getting sued by that guy for taking all of his ideas.
Literature Devil?
Yeah.
Probably not. Considering our opinions on like storytelling and what we want to see, I think Literature Devil would like us. But yeah, like basically the first episode of High Guardian Spice, you have to tell a story. Like your opening chapter, your opening episode, you have to have a beginning, middle, end that sets up your entire universe and what you're doing forwards and what you're doing going forward. So what you want to do is you want to pick one specific thing. You can't dump and explain absolutely everything in the first episode. You need to establish the tone, establish the universe, make sure people have an understanding of who these people are and what's going on and the premise, and then focus on an aspect and make that the opening conflict for the first thing. And basically the actual High Guardian Spice just sort of prattled around and they traveled to the magic school and nothing really happened like narratively. I think they ran into like a fight, but but like the fight didn't have anything to do with what was going on. It's just a fight. It's been a while since I watched the video. The fight didn't have anything to do with going on. So he basically established the characters, made some kind of conflict, within the premise, and then the fight was derived out of that conflict, and then the resolution of the fight set up the rest of the story going forward. Like, okay, this girl has magic potential but needs to learn this, and this character is strong but is lacking heart or something like that. And so basically Literature Devil's version, it was still High Guardian Spice, but it actually told a story, and he was setting it up so that you could tell future stories.
Alrighty then. Alex, what do you think? What would you name us a franchise that you're not a fan of? Now you're in charge of it. What do you do without what do you do?
Well, I just picked He-Man out of nowhere. If they came to me and told me, like, hey, Alex, you're a good writer, we want you to write for this new He-Man show, I would warn them, oh, just so you know, I don't really know anything about He-Man, but the paycheck here looks big, so I'll take it.
That's a lot of zeros.
I have to, I don't know if I actually would, but a writer usually does have to say yes if they're picked. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they might not get hired later. I know that's at least how it is for voice acting. But I would warn them and tell them, I don't know much about this, but I am willing to watch, like the original He-Man show and maybe another He-Man show, just to get a good feel of what this is. I'd probably want to marathon the entire G1 He-Man show, and also request that you give me other writers, co-writers or whatever, to help me out with it. And I promise you, I will make it like how the fans know He-Man. I will make it, I'll try something new with it. I might make it a bit modern, but I'll warn them and say, I don't want to make something political. And hopefully they'll say, yeah, we understand. We're not going for something political or something that looks like it came from hell, like Thundercats Roar. It looks like it came from Steven Universe hell.
So yeah, it looks like so it sounds like what you're saying is you would take He-Man and make it more like the original He-Man.
Well, not too much like the original. I mean, the new one by Kevin Smith was supposed to be like a sequel show to the original, and it did so many things wrong. I haven't seen it, but I take the reviewers' words for it. But if it was something I didn't know about, they better tell me, make it entertaining, don't make it political. Because if, like with me, it would be the opposite. If they told me, we want you to throw in some of your right-wing politics, I would probably just walk out the door. Like, because maybe I'll do something that, like, might align with my politics a little, but I wouldn't force it in, and I'd make it incredibly subtle and to a point where, like, both sides can agree, yeah, that's a good message. I'm not going to make something totally, like, outrageously, like, conservative or whatever. Take a well-known property and make it, like, a bunch of Trump references or something. Like, no way, hell no, I'm not doing that. So they better not tell me to make it political. But if it was something I wasn't familiar with, I'd be happy to do it. Even though I'm not really a fan of He-Man and I don't really think I would care much to get into it now, but I could see myself giving it a try someday. After all, I didn't think I'd become a Brony before I got into My Little Pony Friendship is Magic.
Honestly, if I were told to throw the politics in, I would take the challenge. If they were like, oh, you got to put all of the female empowerment in the story, I'd be like, bro, I've written My Little Pony fan fiction. I can do this. I can do strong female characters.
You'd be like, hold my beer.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what I should do is if they tell me do like the feminist thing or something, I'll be like, okay, and then I'll secretly be like, okay, I'll do the feminist thing. I'll make a strong female, but I'll also make her like ridiculously straight. She's in love with like a really
just
like
full on
kind of like,
you can't just write Gina Carano. They'll catch on to you.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'll get canceled on Twitter or whatever. And
we don't pay attention. You see, the problem with Twitter is people pay attention to it for some reason. You just got to take Dave Chappelle's advice. Twitter is not a real thing. And even Twitter is not a real place. And even if it was, the people there can't even figure out which gender they are half the time. Why would you take them seriously?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Even with Elon Musk in power, it doesn't matter. Yeah, you're right. It's still irrelevant when you really think about it at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. So, here's what you do, Alex. You make it about, you take He-Man and now all the female characters, and you got to make it feminist. So you make a feminist He-Man, He-Man, and the rest of the female cast, heroines and villains alike, and villainesses are like they're all fight. That's the word. What do you want from me? They're all fighting. They're all fighting to get the right to vote. They're trying to put in the 19th Amendment. There's your show. There's your feminist show.
Well, that's a proper feminist thing, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And okay, on a side note, Cordero just dropped a picture of his cat in the chat in the Discord chat, and that was yeah, that was rather distracting, but it's welcome. Anyway, Angel, you are put in charge of a show that you're not a fan of. What do you change about it to make it good?
Lighting. Let's say if I were in charge of like the Halo show, I would just do my best to make decent sci-fi.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
do you know a lot about Halo?
No, not really.
Mm.
I'm not a big fan of it, or most first-person shooters for that matter.
Mm. All right. So let me ask you this then. So Halo, the games focus mostly around the character Master Chief, who's supposed to be a self-insert for the player. Would you make it, but he developed sort of his own character in later games. Would you make it about Master Chief, or would you make it about like some of the surrounding supporting cast, or maybe even like background characters like NPCs like the Marines or the ODSTs that are part of your squad as you're fighting through those games?
Yeah, I guess I could try to like incorporate all of them, but still make Master Chief, the main character.
Okay.
Because that's what he is.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that's all I've got for questions there. Does anybody want to add or say anything before we move on to audience participation?
I mean, I guess we've covered it. The topic tonight was a pretty agreeable night. We kind of seem to be on the same page. I mean, I just don't see another take on this, even just to be the contrarian to have a fun.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
With.
That's what I thought Angel was gonna do is be the contrarian.
You could take the fans or basement dweller cringe and would just ruin it with their non-professionalism. But the thing is that the fans who end up on official stuff, they're there because they were talented, and if they're lacking industry experience, they're usually brought in with people who have the industry experience. Like it just works out.
Yeah, and in a twist that literally nobody saw coming, and we sure as heck didn't say anything about it at the very beginning of the stream, is it just matters whether or not you're a talented fan. Of course, something that we did sort of touch on here is that higher powers that be the puppet masters, pulling the strings, and we should try to find an answer to that question of what's coming first, the people that are fans of the show that have horrible ideas of what the show should be or the franchise should be, or are they getting selected, or are they getting selected by the producers that want to push these narratives? So they're looking for they're scraping the bottom of the barrel for people. Yeah,
they're looking for those writers, and if you're not one of those writers, there's been a decade of getting pushed out of the industry, but I think it's turning around.
Yeah, I've got this image in my head of who's that chick that's in charge of Star Wars right now?
Kathleen Kennedy.
Kathleen Kennedy, yeah.
She's getting fired though.
Yeah,
I guess.
Well,
again, she's being fired again. Every year it's Kathleen Kennedy's finally getting fired, and it never happens.
Yeah, so I just have this mental image in my head of a young Kathleen Kennedy on a message board for Star Wars, never watched it, just doesn't like it, but a dude wearing a Star Wars fan picked on her at school. She's just talking about what Star Wars should be and how horrible it is, and then like a few years later she just gets a message from Disney, "Hey, we saw your message and we saw that you hate Star Wars, come and write for us."
I think she was more on the business side. No, she did. She actually did work on Star Wars stuff with George Lucas, if I recall. Like she
Yeah,
did have
she
a
was
Star Wars
handpicked by
past.
him to be the president back in 2012 when
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Disney
She did have a Star Wars past. She didn't come out of absolutely nowhere. And right now, I'm just picturing, instead of Kathleen Kennedy, I'm now picturing like Lauren Faust, but like a hyper feminist Kathleen version of a Lauren Faust, and she's just wearing a shirt that says "Stallion culture is rape culture."
Oh,
Oh,
jeez.
what the?
That was a horrible
Well,
image that came to my
actually,
head.
you know what, Brawny? Can I say something real quick before audience Q&A?
Sure.
I wanted to say, some people might ask, well, what about a person who has iffy politics? Should you hire them anyway? I say you could, because like Lauren Faust is a feminist and everything, and she didn't used to, but she like in more recent years has been talking about politics, which I wish she wouldn't do. But she, back when she was starting the show, really did seem like she was avoiding putting in controversial like feminist things. For example, somebody on DeviantArt asked her, like, why are all the characters the same body type? And the main reason is because it makes the toys easier to produce and it makes them easier to like animate. You can just take the same template over and over again and just change the colors and the hair and like the eyes. But she did bring up how Mr. and Mrs. Cake are different body types. Mrs. Cake is like short and plump, while Mr. Cake is the she said beanpole.
Mhm.
And she specifically said she made them look like that not because of messaging, but because of like it was more aesthetically pleasing, or to diversify the body types or whatever, not for politics, not for fat feminism or whatever.
And it
That's the same reason.
it
Because in my
conveys
story,
character, which is the most important thing.
yeah, and in my story, which like is in the future in My Little Pony, Pinky has gotten chubby, and so has Spike. Again, same thing, not for messaging, obviously, not for me, but because it's aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. Like I bet you I could take some pictures of Mr. and Mrs. Cake and drop them in front of my parents who've never seen any of this, and say, tell me what you can about this character, about these characters, right? And they'll probably get it pretty accurate. Right after they berate me for that for about 15 minutes, and my father smacks me in the back of the head, right? So that's how that would that's how that would go. But yeah, that's the most important thing is conveying the character through your silhouette and visual design. It's a standard practice, or at least it should be, or at least it used to be. Anyway, let's see here. Doug's Film and TV says, I will say it's not a bad idea to hire fans, and I think the reason why you should hire fans is because they may have new ideas. Like Doctor Who, for example, the writers were fans of the classic series. So yeah, that's something I tried to talk about earlier, and I was hoping somebody knew more about the Doctor Who than I did. But yeah, when something's running when something's running that long, it's impossible for it to go on without hiring someone who already knows about it. One strategy
it was so culturally ubiquitous in Britain, so like if you it was impossible to not at that point.
Yeah, like probably everybody there grew up watching it.
Yeah,
you know, it's like try to find somebody who didn't watch Power Rangers growing up, and that's if you got to have someone who doesn't know anything about it to be a writer. I'm gonna try to pronounce this right, and I'm probably going to fail. Mahavis says, I object to the debate question as a principle, just because I want to see everyone who wants to write. If your ability to appease your audience comes up short, so will your production run. So he's saying that if, you know, it sounds like Mahavis is saying that the writing staff should be a revolving door until we find people that are good at writing these characters from the source material, regardless of whether or not their fans are familiar with the show. But if you don't have someone who's at least familiar with the source material and the world and how it works and things like that, you're going to get horrendous continuity errors and plot holes, and that was another thing I've heard about Doctor Who having giant continuity errors like that, because it's impossible to keep
Oh yeah.
when your show is running for 60 some odd years or
Yeah.
almost 60 years, it's impossible to just keep that. Like I remember hearing like
Fixed-
at one point
fixed
in
points
time,
in time.
yeah, I remember at one point in time for some reason the doctor was half human. I heard about this. I can't confirm, but I'm just repeating something I saw years ago.
Yeah, yes, stuff like that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
it's complicated.
yeah, so Mojave,'s how do you, if you're still listening, how do you get around a problem like that if you're just having a revolving door or just giving a chance to anybody?
I think the idea that Mojave's is going for is like the talent should be talent. Like if the talent is coming in to write something and they suck, kick him to the curb. Like as it should be. Like if you can't produce, then get out. So like I think he's saying that he's dumping the premise because should fans write canon, who cares if it's fans or not? The writers either make something good or they don't, and if they don't, goodbye. Which I can respect that take, and that take actually aligns with my take of I think fans should write stuff because the fans who end up on these writing teams are usually very talented, and if that's the case, then they'll make something good.
Okay. Moving on here, Paladin Pony T says people who grew up with something they loved usually want to do a good job when they're given the chance to work on it, like Dune and some of the Star Wars shows and more. And he also wants to ask all of us, would you hire a fan to work on your stuff? So now that's a hard question for the panel of fan fiction writers here. But like, would I hire a fan to write for a buck to the face? I guess probably not. Because I don't really think anybody can sort of grasp my character and the story I'm trying to tell better than me, especially given that the story I'm trying to tell is fairly analogous to how my real life has actually gone. Mm-hmm. So, and I'll spoil just a little bit right up until the very end. But for me to answer that question, no. But like, so let's tweak the question a little bit here. I hope you'll forgive me for doing that, Paladin.
Okay.
But so let's say you're writing your own show. Would you, and you need to bring on more people, would you bring on fans? What do you guys think?
In my own stuff, the stuff that I create. That's an interesting one for me because I do like, single author novel style writing on fan fiction. I wouldn't be against working with someone else, but like for writing stories, that's usually like a one person's vision thing. So like I write in a medium that it kind of works for it to be one person. If it was an animation, or a medium that is more complicated, at least mechanically more complicated, I would probably have to hire other people. But as far as would I hire a fan to work on my stuff, yeah, if I thought that there was something that somebody could add or that we could make a good story together. I mean, I have an editor. I have an editor who reads my stuff and has input on what I do, but the creative vision is definitely mine for my, childish fan fictions.
Alrighty then. And Angel, what would you do?
I don't know. I guess I could like bring in fans as like creative consultants, but I'm not a writer, so.
Well, we're dealing with a hypothetical of yes, you are a writer, and this is your pet project that is airing in a primetime slot on television, and you gotta have the best. Do you hire a fan?
If they happen to be qualified, then yeah, I guess.
I guess that's all that matters. Alex, what would you do?
Now, by pet project, you mean like anything original or like a fan project or what?
Original, I'm assuming. Like I said, I'm taking some liberties with Paladin's question here.
Yeah. Well, if I were making a movie, which I don't really want to do, but if I were making a movie out of the book I'm writing right now, which can't give away any details about it, but yes, I would want people who are passionate about it and, will help me out. Of course, I'd have to have pretty fair amounts of creative control myself, but I don't know if I'd be the director, but maybe the writer. I'd want to hire a director who knows the thing and is passionate about it. And no offense to Michael Bay, but I wouldn't hire him unless he could prove to me that he has read my book and really believes in what I'm doing and understands it. I would still have to have enough creative control to keep away from any robot fart jokes or whatever, not testicles or anything like that. None of that in my movie. So, yes, I would want to hire a fan, though. I would want to hire people who understand what it is I'm doing, and again, that can prove to me they are not in it to push weird feminist politics or anything like that, and are not gonna Luke Skywalker or Jake Skywalker any of my characters.
Yeah.
And I would not sell it the way George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney. I don't know what he was thinking, but I'm pretty certain he regrets it.
That is not the worst decision George Lucas has ever made from his perspective, because he did the whole thing where he tried to make the prequels his vision and continue the story, and I mean he made some money, but it's decades of just this is shit, the originals were better, fuck you, you ruined Star Wars. I don't know, I don't blame the guy for selling it to someone. All right, if you're so smart, somebody else fucking make it that. Yeah. I can understand that one from him.
Well, I heard a rumor, I guess, that he actually agreed with fans about the prequels, and sometime before it was sold to Disney, he would actually laugh about some of the things that the fans would say about Jar
that's cool.
or something.
Yeah.
I heard that. I don't know if it's true,
it
but I'm pretty certain he's taken it like a man and he's not totally depressed.
I agree. Oh no, he's rolling in money.
Yeah.
Well, he's fine. George Lucas is doing all right. Don't worry about him.
Yeah. If I were him, I wouldn't make it about the money. I know it's a lot of money, but I would want to keep it. If I knew what was going to happen to Star Wars, because I was okay with Disney having Star Wars at first. I liked
Me too, yeah.
But once The Last Jedi hit theaters, I quickly realized something's wrong.
Yep, that was the
George
turning
Lucas
point.
did not have sold it.
Am I the only one that knew off the bat Disney was going to tank that thing?
You're so smart, Brony.
I'm smarter than I was, for sure.
Scandrinin, he used to be on the debates with us, and he's been in a few of my videos. The Black Griffin with the purple head. He knew right away Disney was going to tank it too. Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, Mugen Uchiha said,
should put money on it.
Yeah, should have. My answer to this question is yes and no. It depends on the fan base, for example. Okay, so the fan base is something we definitely didn't talk about, and that's an interesting, so anyway, Dragon Ball Super is currently under the guide of not only Toriyama, but Toyotaro, also known as Toyable fan mangaka. So...
Are you gonna be okay? You barely got through that.
Oh geez, who knows?
Okay.
Who knows? Okay, I'm running on 3 hours of sleep here.
Repeat after me. Toriyama's toys for tots are tantalizingly
terrible.
I ran out of T words. Terrible. There you go.
Oh, okay. So yeah, cut me some slack here. I've never been good at talking. But anyway, yeah. So do we trust Dragon Ball fans? Now, Dragon Ball fans, it's not like they're Sonic fans that just sit there and make really weird art on DeviantArt all day. But
they don't do that as much anymore, to be fair. I don't.
Yeah, but by the same token, I've seen some Dragon Ball fans come up with some weird stuff, and they usually play it off as alternate universe. But from what I've seen of Super, it really is not that good, and I would have rather just. I
like Super.
Yeah, a lot of people do like Super. I think it's doing this. It's doing the same thing as Star Wars did. It's doing the same thing as Korra did. It's just taking everything that was good and unique about it and just saturating it with those concepts until it's no longer good and unique, and then you end up with these giant plot holes because they don't really seem to understand character limitations anymore either, from what I've seen. What I did see one example of Goku fighting in the multiversal tournament or something like that, and he used a technique that got him sick because he combined a power up with the Kaioken, and then in like 2 episodes later, he's recovered from the sickness and he's doing it again on the but on literally like 10 times scale. But with no drawbacks, and things like that. That would have never flown in the original Dragon Ball. It would have been okay. I can do this thing, but that's got to be the nuclear option because there's a chance I might not survive it myself, sort of thing.
Are you talking about the Ultra Instinct?
I believe so. Like I said, have not seen very much of it, and what I have seen, I have not liked. But I wasn't much of a Dragon Ball fan to begin with. Let's see here. Doug's Film and TV says, if you had to write one of your favorite franchises, who would you want to work for? He says, for me, it would be Doctor Who, Thomas and Friends, Chicago Fire, Star Wars, and Law and Order. Okay, so I've never, I know what Thomas and Friends is. I don't know what Chicago Fire is. So guys, what show do you want to write for? Alex, let's start with you.
Oh, why? I mean, I'm already writing my own fanfic, kind of like sequel spin-off thing to My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. So if they can promise me they won't ruin the story I'm already writing, yes, I would love to do that. I've also had ideas for Transformers. I'd love to write for that. What else? I'm trying to think of something. Looking around in my room at all the various action figures I've got to see if there's anything in here. I can't. Well, Star Wars. I have had a couple ideas for how to make the sequels better, but there's no way they're going to let me do that unless they do come out someday and say, "Yeah, we're rebooting the sequels," like they did with Terminator, except they didn't do it well. Terminator: Dark Fate bombed hard at the box office. It was kind of some woke feminist garbage. I hear. I haven't seen it, but I'll take those.
That wasn't the biggest problem. It just wasn't good.
What was the biggest problem?
I mean, Terminator movies always run into canon issues, but so basically it's just like, well, if you write a good story, I'll like that. They didn't have a good story because like the Terminator lady, was just. The characters were all pieces of wood. Like the acting talent wasn't very good, or they weren't directed well. So you're writing this story about like these pieces of wood, and it's like cognitively dissonant because you're going to be the hero, you're going to be the new John Connor girl version of John Connor, and and you're the hero of our time, and you don't believe for a second that this high school sophomore is ever going to be like some kind of badass, and it's not that. And it's not that you couldn't write that; it's that the portrayal is it doesn't match with what the characters are saying and what's happening on screen. Yeah. So it just fundamentally failed on its own, regardless of any message that you wanted to have.
Yeah, well, I have had a bit of an idea for how I could have rewritten the Terminator sequels, because I've seen both the first films and the third film. I did see Salvation, but I don't remember much about it. I haven't seen Genesis. Don't care to.
Yeah.
Dark Fate. I don't want to watch that either. I will avoid it as much as I'm avoiding Ghostbusters 2016. Okay. So yeah.
Angel, what would you write for if you could?
Probably like MLP. I'm not sure.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to be different. I would write for Tekken if given the opportunity.
Okay, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I'd write for Tekken or Street Fighter and maybe Halo. Because, like, even though I don't play those games very much, I am familiar with them and I do really like their story. I do think they're really cool. So yeah, I'd like to write for those. I don't know if I could write for ponies, because I'm not a good writer in a sense of range. I can write inspirational, like TED Talks, and I can write action sequences. And as much as I try to avoid doing that, everything I do inevitably boils down to one of those two things when it comes to my writing. And so, I might sit there and as a bench warmer until someone comes up, the producer comes up to me and goes, "Hey, Brawny, there needs to be a big villain confrontation in this next episode. Can we need you to write this one." But I would either make things, if I tried to write for Pony, it would either be too real, or it would just be a bunch of action set pieces, and which probably would not mesh well with what My Little Pony is supposed to be. So I would have to write for Tekken.
Yeah, I've same thing for me with My Little Pony. I might have that same problem. I literally have a story about basically a kaiju battle between Tyrek and Scorpion. So maybe I wouldn't make it, but it'd be awesome.
Alrighty then. And okay, so did you guys see any chat that you wanted to address?
See, Kanto Acrylic VA says, "I say it depends on the fandom. Examples being Ian Flynn and Evan Stanley for Sonic IDW." And I have a couple of things to say about Ian Flynn.
Tell us.
So he's basically like the Dave Filoni of Sonic, and just like Dave Filoni, he has fallen into a couple of writing issues, like what Aleximus said about member berries, like referencing a bunch of things that happened in like previous entries.
I probably have that issue too with my writing.
May seem like a good thing at first, but it can be quite annoying.
Okay. Did anybody else see anything?
No, I didn't see anything in the chat specifically.
Oh, you know something? Just to add on real quick, I would 100% write for Avatar. I could write original characters for Avatar.
Really?
Yeah, I could write original characters for Avatar, and I could write the gang. I could write the gang as well.
That's funny, because I was even specifically thinking that I wouldn't write for Avatar because it was The Last Airbender was just done so well.
Yeah.
Like I'm like 10 out of 10 no notes. Korra, Korra is good. I like Korra, but I think there's a lot of stuff I wouldn't mind fixing in Korra. I would obviously write for the show. As somebody who does write My Little Pony stories, I do think that I can write in the show's style and tone. That'd be fun to do. I'd love to write for Equestria Girls, obviously, another thing that I do. I would also like to be handed Doctor Who, because Doctor Who, I like the Russell T Davies and early Stephen Moffat era, where there was these concepts of time is in flux. There are fixed points in time. And like he established these rules. It was still a soft magic system, because wibbly wobbly timey wimey is pretty much just a goofy way of saying soft magic system. But there was a couple of hard and fast rules, and it made some really, really good drama out of that. And then Stephen Moffat ended up undoing a lot of that canon, and was just like, time is kind of whatever I need it to be for what's happening right now. And I think that had some consequences narratively later on. So I would like to go back to those rules and just write Doctor Who as a soft magic system, as it was meant to be, with just a couple of the rules that we know.
Yeah. Well, I know I could write Avatar because it's basically everything I said before earlier. It's action set pieces, and it's really strong, well-established characters. It's a hard magic system that I know and understand very well, given how I've dedicated most of my life to either studying the actual physical arts themselves or the philosophical and spiritual arts behind them. So, I could totally write the gang. and I think I would do a good job. Or if he didn't want me to write the gang, I could definitely come up with just about anything in that universe. Like give me some bullet points and I got you.
I'd like to see your Avatar fic. Like write something in the Avatar universe.
Give me some bullet points. I'll see what I can do. And
Yeah, I found another comment.
tell me.
Speaking of Avatar, placeholder aka Caesar Light said that reminds me, M. Night Shyamalan had claimed to be a big fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and that doesn't change the fact that the movie was a travesty. Thoughts? M. Night Shyamalan was probably lying.
He might have
Disagree.
been.
He was not lying.
He might have been lying. I can't say for sure whether or not he was lying, but what I do know for sure is that that was the case of him being dictated of what needed to happen. Like he did not have any creative control. There was a ton of he did. There was just a ton of nepotism on that set. It was a lot of executive interference, just the type of thing you would expect to ruin something like Avatar.
Shyamalan actually wanted to make the most faithful adaptation that he possibly could. There's a lot of scenes that are just shot-by-shot remakes from the show, and honestly, his earnestness in trying to be true to Avatar is part of what buried him. Like, he was taking things like, oh, remember this? This is directly from the show. Here's a thing that happened, but he didn't understand what made those scenes work or what made those character beats so great. And what ended up
Time
on
constraints
screen,
certainly didn't help matters.
No, it didn't help. So what ended up on screen ended up being super hollow. And then he also wanted to like adultify it. He wanted it to be a bit more dark and grown up. So what you end up on the screen is something that's both too faithful at the same time, but also looks and feels unfaithful.
How do you adultify Avatar? It's already pretty dang close.
He just said he wanted to make it darker. He wanted to.
I mean, do you show the deaths on screen? Because that's about the only thing you really could change.
I agree. I don't think you needed to. It was already a story. I think I agree that it was already adult enough.
There was one thing about that movie that I really liked, and I might get
the credits.
No, you know how Aang had the tattoos and they were like patterns.
Yeah. I like that too.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. And then when he transformed, the patterns would light up. Yeah, I thought that was really cool. Be super hard to do.
If they had given him speed arrows from video game racing games in live action, that probably wouldn't have looked.
Yeah, and it would make sense because you would never be able to animate that, or you could. It would just take a million years.
Live action. Yeah, you probably have to like CG his tattoos, the whole thing, which was so yeah, I agree with that. I thought that the visual design of that was pretty good.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's all I've got, and I think that's a good place to wrap it up for tonight. So, Aleximus, did we get the most out of your topic suggestion?
Yeah, there were some really good points that you guys brought up. I'm sorry we didn't have to argue about it as much, Brawny. I know you like when we have opposing viewpoints, but I thought this was actually a really good conversation because the main reason I brought up this topic the other night for a suggestion was because I think it's becoming an issue, especially like because of that Marvel thing that TheQuartering was talking about. It's becoming an issue for franchises that they're not hiring fans anymore, or if they're fans, they're activist fans, which in my opinion are more like half fans. You know, they're half fan, half activist, and you really should steer clear of those people. I would not hire somebody who is an activist fan unless they can prove to me that they will not mix in their politics with the writing and they're a good writer to begin.
Yeah, and then you fire them if they lie to you. Now, so
yes.
A point that TheQuartering was making in that video is like something he kept talking about in that video is that they're just sissifying Thor. And I remember when Endgame came out and Cordero got so mad because Thor was like his favorite and he was like aspiring to be like Thor in his bodybuilding, and then Thor comes out and he's gained all this weight. And yeah, I remember that really pissing you off.
That was kind of tongue in cheek. Like I didn't mind the fat Thor storyline.
Yeah,
what slightly bothered me is I'm like, okay, and now Thor needs to go back to how he was. I didn't want him to stay Fat Thor. Fat Thor was hilarious.
Okay, so let's see here. Edgewood says, Brawny, do you have a Discord server? Yes.
No.
Shut up. It's for patrons, but the good news is my Patreon is only $1 a month, and the higher tiers come with perks and all sorts of stuff. So please check that out if you're at all interested. I'm trying to.
It's $10 a month, and we have drugs.
I'm going.
We're trying to get you some more money.
You
Brian.
are talking an awful lot of trash for someone who I know where you live. All right, so yeah, and there's Princess Heather Blossom calling me because she wants to go get Culver's. So we're gonna real quick, Angel. One thing you learned tonight.
I learned that the conclusion to tonight's debate wasn't as close as I predicted it to be.
And Cordero, one thing you learned tonight.
I learned that I forgot to talk about Eiley Monty.
Yeah, we'll have to save that for the next debate. Actually, you know what? I'll give you 2 minutes right now. Tell me what Eiley Monty did.
Some of her songs on my playlist don't play anymore because she put them behind a paywall. Pony songs that she did 7 years ago and that were free on YouTube for a long time. Suddenly she's trying to milk every last dollar out of her old fandom stuff, and it's just like, fuck you. It's really gross that just after like 7 years of being on YouTube, suddenly this old fan made thing is now behind a paywall. Who's paying for that?
Someone's gonna rip it and put it on an archive channel. Just give it a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Well, I thought she didn't even care about her Brony past anymore. She
doesn't, which is fine. She doesn't have to care about her Brony past.
Yeah.
What pisses me off is that it's behind a paywall. If it was just this video is private or not available on YouTube anymore, I'd be like, well, yeah, that happens, whatever. But the fact that it's behind a paywall that makes me upset. You have to become a member on her YouTube.
All right, and that's all the time we have for today, folks.
YouTube
very grateful to all of my generous supporters on Patreon. Thanks for coming out. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if it's your first time watching, I hope you have earned your continued viewership. Thanks once again to my patrons, especially those on the $10 and up tier, such as Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak Ministries, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, DJ Skywalker, Rein-Kun, Morningstar, Pony Cordero, who's with us, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden, MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Kanto Acrylic VA, Zoroark 720, Mr. Sonic 31, Ridge the Hedgehog, and Dark Malcontent, author of the Metaverse series. If you'd like to be on the show, I'd love to have you. We'll just get you on the Patreon for as little as $1 a month. And there's a lot of other tiers there that come with additional perks, so I highly recommend checking those out in the links in the description. From there, you get into the Discord server where you can hang out with me, hang out with these guys, suggest topics, and suggest the games that we play on Friday Night Fights. That's the gaming stream that I do every other week. And so, yeah, hopefully I will see you all in the future. Thanks again for coming out and giving me a good debate. One last thing I gotta say is that if anybody ever hired me to write for Avatar, the first thing I'm going to say is, okay, you're aware that if I write for Avatar, Korra will cease to exist. So just be at peace with that. And
How dare you? No.
Yeah, we'll fight about that another time. Say goodnight, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Higher